The weather forecasters were saying it was going to be the next snowpocalypse. Looking at the radar, it looked like we were going to get some serious snow. We had hunkered down in the house, but then, of course, I realized we didn't have any milk. I also knew that the grocery stores were jammed with people stocking up on things like milk, eggs, and cheese, etc. So I didn't want to go anywhere near those. There was a convenience store several blocks away, so I decided to make the trek there on foot because the roads looked treacherous for a car journey. I was all bundled up as I stepped out into the white world as the snow continued to come down steadily. It felt like we were going to get an inch an hour the way it was going. I started my walk moving through the snow. It was kind of nice to be out with the snow. That makes the world quieter and more contained. I was part of the way there, and the snow was getting heavier, and I was having some doubts about the wisdom of this trip, but I kept moving along. My feet were crunching in the snow, and it was about the only sound I could hear because of the way the snow muffled all the sound in the area. At one point I stopped to adjust my scarf, and I heard feet crunching in the snow not far from me. I wondered who the heck was as dumb as me to go out in this mess. I spun around in the snow, and I couldn't see anybody, but I kept hearing the crunching of feet making their way through the heavy snow. This was getting pretty weird and was starting to creep me out because I couldn't see anybody. I restarted my journey and picked up the pace as I headed for my destination. I decided to make a quick stop to listen again for the footsteps, and I didn't hear any for a few seconds, and then they started back up. I did another quick spin, and still no signs of anybody else in the snow. I really started moving as quickly as I could through the snow, and I rounded the corner and I headed down a side street. Ahead of me, I saw a figure approaching me. It was far off, and I could barely see it through all the snow. And I wondered if that's the person I'd been hearing all along. As I got closer, I yelled out to them, "Hey, this is a crazy night to be out in, isn't it?" I got no response. They just kept coming towards me. This was getting pretty darn spooky, and I yelled at them again, and still no response. The dark shape kept trudging through the snow, heading right for me, and something told me I needed not to be there when the figure reached me. I made a quick detour down another side street and was only about a half a block from the convenience store. I glanced back over my shoulder and I thought I saw the shape again in the snow, but I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to slow down too much so that it could catch up to me. I made it to the convenience store, and it was such a relief to be inside a place with light and no snow hitting me. There was only one cashier there, and I was so happy to see a person who looked to be bored out of their mind. I quickly grabbed some milk, and I grabbed a candy bar too, and made my purchases. I killed some time pretending to check the messages on my phone, hoping it would give time for whatever the shape was to move out of the area. I headed back home, and I couldn't resist the chance to go back to where I saw the dark shape. I looked at the ground where I saw the shape had been walking, and there were no footprints at all. The snow was coming down, but not enough to cover up footprints entirely. I could see my earlier footprints. This sent a chill down my spine. I turned around and made a beeline for home. I made it back home with no events happening to me, and I quickly got inside and locked the door. My wife looked at me and said, "What's going on?" And I just said, "It's nothing. It was just a cold night." I sat down the milk and my candy bar and took off my coat. I looked out the window at the snowy night to see if I saw any shape, and I could swear I saw something moving in the snow. I closed the curtains for the night and huddled up in the warmth, knowing I wasn't going to go back out there for any reason. Ever since I was a little kid, it frightened me because of what had happened there a long time ago. Let's go back and see why. It was a snowy January day, and I was getting a little bit of cabin fever and decided to take a walk. The snow was not super heavy, but it still put a chill in the air, and you had to watch your footing. I had to run this errand, which would take me out of my neighborhood. This meant I would have to go through that tunnel to get to the next neighborhood. As a kid, I'd had friends in that neighborhood, and I would cut through the tunnel to get over to see them. One time, I was making my way through it, and I heard a strange noise. A scuffling. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. I just kept moving, and then I stopped to see if I could figure out where it was coming from. I didn't see anything, so I proceeded to keep moving again, and suddenly, out of nowhere, a homeless man just jumped on me. Maybe it was an accident, or maybe it was on purpose, but we both tumbled to the ground. I had the wind knocked out of me, and he grabbed for my ankle. His hand latched around me, and I had to kick it to get it off my ankle. I scrambled to my feet and ran from there, not looking back. I could hear him calling after me, but I ignored those calls. This event would scar me for life. So this time I was heading for that tunnel. Despite the fact that this was so many years ago, I still felt a twinge go up my spine and my stomach go cold. But I wasn't going to let that stop me, so I headed for the tunnel. As I got there, I scanned around to see if anybody was there, and I didn't see or hear anything. I entered the tunnel and made my way, and then I heard the scuffling sound again. And that took me straight back to the childhood incident. I hastened my pace, but then it sounded like the scuffling sound was in front of me, so I stopped. Hoping to avoid anybody lurching out at me, I scanned around and still didn't see anybody. Eventually I knew I had to move forward, so I did. Then I heard a sound as if something had fallen. I looked around, but I didn't see anything. Then I saw a shadowy shape at the end of the tunnel behind me. It started moving my way, and the fear came back full force. My feet didn't work. I couldn't make them move. The shape got closer and closer. Finally, I broke from my trance, and just like when I was a kid, I ran out of that tunnel, not looking back. I could hear the footsteps behind me, but I didn't turn around. I made it to my destination, and my friend said I looked kind of pale and clammy, and I said it was just the weather. I got a little overheated while walking. I did mention that I'd passed through the tunnel, and my friend went on to explain to me that a long time ago, maybe around the same time as my incident, a homeless man had been on the railroad tracks above the tunnels and had been hit by a train. His body landed at the base of the tunnel. Who knows if it could be the same homeless man I encountered as a kid. My friend said he was always creeped out when he passed through that tunnel. Hearing this story may explain who was after me again after all those years.